Um, some questions over, and I'm not sure what numbers they were in the assignment, but this is one of them that traditionally every year is something that at first attempt people struggle with, okay? Because what they do is they look at the picture and would you guys agree that we're going to take this blue angle here and we're going to add to it this yellow angle? Those are the two that we can add together, right? Okay. So what we do is we write down 11x plus 8 plus then 8x plus 1. And then it's a question, well, what do I do now? What do I set this equal to? 180. Why 180 though? Okay, so in the directions they tell us straight angle. Okay? And that's the idea, guys, that and why you're going to find out in this class there's a lot of vocabulary that we pay attention to and we talk about, and you might seem like, dude, there's so much vocabulary. I hate this class because of the vocabulary. But we have to do that. We have to talk about it because questions like this are impossible to answer if we don't know that vocabulary. And it happens all the time. Okay? So straight angle, by definition, is an angle that is 180 degrees. So then the blue angle plus the yellow angle should add up to 180. Okay. Then we can combine like terms. So we get 19x plus 9 equals 180. And then 19x equals 171. And then x would be, x ends up being 9. Okay. So if x is 9, now the question is what are RQS and S or TQS? Okay, so what is the blue angle? What is the yellow angle? So the blue angle is 11 times 9, 99, plus 8 would be 97 degrees. Okay. And now plug it in here, 72 plus 1 would be 73. Do those then add up to 180? And that's the check to make sure that we've done it correctly. Okay. So a lot of those questions, guys, when you get stuck, you might write the expression 11x plus 8 plus 8x plus 1, but don't know what to write it equal to. Always remember that there's probably something hiding in the directions. Okay. So we'll jump down and do another one of those. Here it says we've got another straight angle. Okay, so, and I didn't do this on the last one, but I like to write out like measure of angle RQS plus the measure of angle SQT is equal to the measure of angle RQT. Does everybody agree with that? Yes. Okay. The reason I like to do that is because now I can look at this, okay, well, what is RQT? Right there it tells me, oh, this right-hand side now has to be 180. RQS, that has to be the 14x plus 6. Got my plus sign. And then TQS is 10x plus 6. Okay. I'll leave that alone, let you guys solve that, continue that on your own. But that, again, exact same style as that first one. Does that kind of help out a little bit? It seems simpler now, right? Good. Okay. So let's do the clock one. It says find smaller angle measure of the hands of a clock at the given time. Okay. So if I look at our clock, see if I can. Let's do this. All right. So if that's our clock. If I take and it's all these questions were a hour increment, meaning that they were either asking you 4 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 12 o'clock, something like that. Okay. So let's do this question where it's 1 o'clock. If it's 1 o'clock, my hour hand or my minute hand is there, and my hour hand is pointing at the 1, right? Okay. How many different little angles like this can I attach my, I can keep doing it. So let's say that my hour hand was either at, in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so forth. How many different sections does that create? Does that kind of make sense to everybody? I can take my clock and I can break it up into 12 slices, right? We call them sectors, but we can break it up into 12 equal slices, okay? How many degrees did we say were in a clock or in a circle? 360. So I take 360 and divide it by 12. That gives me 30 degrees. Each one of these little angles that I have in here is 30 degrees. Does that make sense? So once I know that information, if it's at 1 o'clock, again, that one's not too hard. At 1 o'clock, it's only one of those angles, right? So it'd be 30 degrees. But if it's at 4 o'clock, still got my hour hand at 12, and then we got our minute, our minute hand at 12, and our hour hand pointing at 4. How many of those little sections, those little angles, are we adding together in there? 4 of them, right? So we got 30, 30, 30, 30, and that would be 120 degrees if it was 4 o'clock. If it was 5 o'clock, we just add another 30 degrees, right? 6 o'clock would be 180 degrees. Now, if we look at the way they verbalize this, they said find the smaller angle. When we do this, and this is part of like a larger, more difficult course in trigonometry, that is one angle. That's the smaller angle that is made by the hands of the clock. Does that make sense? The other angle is this big green one. Does that kind of make sense? If this one's 120, this green one's going to be 240 because they have to add up to 360. In this class, initially, we will always be talking about this small one, this blue one, okay? So when they say, well, what is the time, or what is the angle when the time is 8 o'clock? So we're looking at that. Would you guys, the smaller angle now would be here, right? And again, we can break that up into 4 sections and to be 120 degrees. Does that kind of make sense? Now, something that will this question will be something if you keep going on the track that you are, and you guys take college algebra trigonometry, the question will eventually be if it's we can actually do this now. Let's say it's 4:30. If it's 4:30, shouldn't the hour hand, keep getting that mixed up, the minute, yeah, the hour hand, be there halfway between 4 and 5. Does that make sense? And the minute hand should be there at 30, right? Okay. Well, that would be one angle between the hours, so that'd be 30 degrees, right? How many degrees is that if the hour hand is halfway between 4 and 5? 15, right? So 4:30 would be 15 degrees. Or sorry, 45 degrees, 15 plus the 30. Is everybody okay with that idea? Okay. So that's something maybe we can do now. But what if it was like 4:50? Now the hour hand has moved away from the halfway mark, right? It's basically 5/6 of the way to 5. And now we have to figure out, how big essentially is that little 1/6 of its way of 30. So it'd be 1/6 of 30 is how many degrees? 5 degrees. So it needs 5 more degrees to get to the 5. Okay. And then we can say, okay, well then it's 30 degrees from 5 to 6, another 30 from 6 to 7, another 30 from 7 to 8, another 30 from 8 to 9, and then 9 to 10. So how many 30s was that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. So it'd be 150, right? And we add the 5 then that we found as being 1/6 of the way from 5 o'clock. So then we have 155 as the degree between those two hands. And there's other ways that we can do that when we get to trigonometry. But we can make this problem so much more difficult by doing that. And it gets even more difficult. 450 is not bad, but what if it's 453? Now it gets a lot uglier. Does that make sense? Okay. Because that hour hand is continually, if it's a legit clock, the clock I have stinks. Like my clock I have, it only jumps, it's not even every minute. So if it's a legit clock that is slowly always, both hands are always moving. Does that make sense? The hour hand is moving slow, okay, but it is always moving in a legitimate clock, okay? Does that help with that question? All right. Okay. So this one asks you to look at the image, develop a relationship, and then use the information that they've given you about angle AOB, angle BOC, and angle COD to find X. Okay? So what I like to do here is, think about, if I look at all of these angles, AOB, there's BOC, and there's COD, and we might initially start thinking, okay, measure of AOB plus the measure of angle BOC plus the measure of angle COD, that's the yellow plus the green plus the blue, should add up to angle AOD, right? Does that make sense to everybody? And if you wrote that, that's great, that's awesome, that's the angle addition postulate, and you've mastered it. But when I go to the problem and I start to fill in specific values, you're going to fill in everything over there. You have a way of substituting every one of those relations over there, every one of those objects over there. But do you have, anywhere in the problem, anything that says what measure of angle AOD is? No, okay? So even though we might think initially it looks like angle addition, they're actually trying to get you to see a different relationship here. Go ahead. Yes, okay. So I don't know if we talked about it specifically yesterday, but when we talk about an angle and we want to show two angles congruent, much like when we have two segments that are congruent, we put those hash marks in the segment. With angles, they put these little arcs inside the angles to tell you that they're congruent, okay? Sometimes they'll actually add even something like that. I add those a lot. That's just the way I was taught. But that is information telling me that those two angles are indeed congruent. Does that make sense? So if they're congruent angles, then their measurements have to be the same. So we'll go 4x minus 2 equals 2x plus 12. I'll give you 2x equals 14, and then x is 7. Now that I know what x is, I can, if I needed to, plug that in. 28 minus 2 would be 26. Plug 7 in, 35 plus 17, what's that? 52. And then, again, plug in 7 here, so 14 plus 12, 26 again. Okay. Now, if I wanted to find out what AOD was, I could add all those up. Okay. Now, here's my question. Does this middle angle BOC, we found it to be 52. Does it look visually like it should be twice as big as the other two that we've colored up there? No. And that's the thing that you're going to find out, is that you don't want to go off of the way they look. Okay. So if I were to start this problem without any markings in the figure, so if we started it like that, okay, we look at those three things. Some people might even argue, hey, it looks like all three are the same, so let's set them all three equal, or any two of them equal. Or you might say AOB is the same as COD. But without the markings or them telling me that in the directions, I don't want to make that conclusion. Does that make sense? Okay. You've all heard the phrase, don't judge
somebody by the way they look. Don't judge a book by its cover, that kind of thing, right? Because you don't know necessarily everything that is behind the scenes. Same thing here with these types of things. Looks can be deceiving. We don't want to make assumptions. Okay, we have to be told that information, and that's kind of the way that they're going to do it with those marks and the angles. Does that kind of make sense? Anything else? We're good? Sure? All right.
All right. So inside Schoology, if you go down to section 1.4, your assignment, the worksheet that I want you to work on is right here in red. Okay. So you're going to click on that. A couple things here about these worksheets. A lot of times they're scanned in from somewhere else, another handout that I have or something like that. And initially when it shows up inside the browser, it's going to be difficult maybe to determine whether like a plus, like if I look at this plus sign where my cursor is right now, some people's might be kind of sketchy to determine whether it's a plus sign or a minus sign just because of the pixelation. So my suggestion, download this. You download. It'll come down to the bottom left-hand corner. Then you're going to open it up. And then once you can open it up, you can then, if you have questions, you can zoom in and you can decide, yeah, that's got to be a plus sign, right? Does that kind of make sense? It's just the way that the scan feature on the scanner downstairs sometimes gets a little bit vague with its copying. Yes. Okay, so this is how we're going to do this. You can print this off if you want. You don't need to print this off. There's absolutely no reason to. Okay, so what I would do is I would do question number 1 on notebook paper, computer paper, whatever. Get an answer, circle it, make sure I know it's number 1, and then go to question 2. Do the same thing. Okay. When you are done, you're going to log into Math Excel, because I want you guys to have feedback whether you're doing this stuff correctly or not, and I want to grade it, okay? So when you're done, you're going to go to Math Excel, and you're going to find, in this case, it's section 1.4. It's called Angle and Segment Addition Worksheet. You're going to click on that. It's going to be one question, but there's 20 parts to it, okay? You're going to click on that, and you're going to type in the answers that you got from the worksheet. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, there's no way that I can fix this, but if it's set up right now to be it'll give you out of 20 points. I'm just supposed to, worksheets are going to be 10 points. Okay. And I'll just take whatever you got out of 20, multiply it by 10 points, and give you your 10 points, or whatever you got out of 10 points. If you miss the first one but get the other 19 right, okay, it's going to tell you got the overall question wrong, but it'll still award you the 19 points for the one that you got right. Does that make sense? Or the ones that you got right. If you do not finish it, okay, you do not insert values for each one of those. When it's submitted to me, it will give you a 0. Okay, and you will keep that 0, so make sure you finish it. Redirections, okay, that says input your answers from last night's assignment in the following boxes. It says make sure you pay attention to the number of each, since they were not consistent with how we normally number things. It says do not put in symbols or for degrees. So you just, when I do these, I'm never asking for units, never asking for symbols. I just want the numerical quantity. Does that make sense? Okay. If you get down to the bottom, so when I made the worksheet, I cut things out of other textbooks. So the first one's like 1 through 8, but then at the bottom you see it goes 16, 17, 14, 15 in the numbering. Okay. I try to keep the structure that you saw in the worksheet the same as when you type them in. So when I'm typing them in, you get down here at the bottom, you see I go 16, 17, and then 14, 15. That's why when I'm doing my homework on my notebook paper, my computer paper, I'm labeling things, and when I type them in, I'm making sure I'm typing in the right numbers for the right questions. Okay, is that all right with everybody? That'll be due on Monday evening again at 11:59 p.m. The only thing about this, it's different than your other Math Excel assignments because you only get one chance, because it's static questions for everybody. If you were to get it wrong and say, show similar exercise. It's going to be the exact same exercise, but when you got it wrong, it would have told you the answers, and you can just go type in those answers. Does that make sense? So to eliminate that from happening, you only get one shot at them. Shouldn't be too difficult. Okay, you've got some time here to work on that. I would anticipate maybe some of you even getting it finished. If you want to bounce ideas off of one another, that's fine. Okay. If you want to ask me questions, by all means, that's why I'm here. Okay, so do that. But you guys you're free to work on that. Yes.